Okay. Today's daf is daf vav in Yoma. We are going to start on daf Hey Amud Bet, about 15 lines up from the bottom, where it says Ketzad Hilbishan. How did they put the bigadim? How did they put the vestments, the outfit on the Kohanim, the Kohen Gadol and the regular Kohanim, when they dedicated the Mishkan? So the Gemara asks, Ketzad Hilbishan? Why are you asking me how they put the clothes on? It's just a historical question. It's not a halachic question. It's not going to happen again. This is what they did in the times of Aharon and his sons. We're asking, how are they going to do it when the Mashiach comes? When they have to rededicate the Kohanim and rededicate the Mishkan. The Gemara asks again, you're asking me something about the future. Then you're going to have Tchiyat HaMetim. We're going to have all of these tzaddikim back. Moshe, Aharon, and his sons. You're not going to need to figure this out. So why do we have to figure it out now? We want to understand the Pesukim. We're not asking because we have a practical need to ask. We're asking because we don't understand the Pesukim. And there's a machlok between Rabbi Chiya and Rabbi Yochanan. One says, whenever it says Chadamar and Chadamar, it means we don't know who said what. Okay? Rabbi Chiya and Rabbi Yochanan argued about this. One says that he had first Aharon, had his clothing put on, and then his sons. And one says, no, it was simultaneous. Now, what is the reason for the confusion? We're going to see. Because the Torah describes the putting on of the clothes twice. First in the Tzava'ah, when the commandment comes to Moshe to put on their clothes. Secondly, in the Asiyah, when it describes the implementation of the commandment.
You see, the one thing I didn't understand with this, from the question and the answer, it brought even more confusion, because how can Moshe actually do it simultaneously?
Well, it's going to explain that. At the end it explains that. No, hold on. Yeah, when it commands Moshe, it says, V'chagarta otam avnet. Okay? It says, you should do it. When he commands him, it says that he should put v'chagarta otam avnet aharon uvanav. It talks about doing them together. Whereas when he actually does it, it says vayiten alav et hakutonet vayachkor oto bavnet vayalbish oto tamil vayiten alav et haifot. In other words, it describes him placing the vestments on Aharon separately and then placing them on the son separately. So when it commands it together. So which one is correct? Did he do it simultaneously or did he do it one after the other? We'll see what it means simultaneously in just a moment. So now the explanation comes. We have to refine what exactly is the argument. Amar Abaye says, everybody agrees that when it came to the ketonet, when it came to the tunic and the mitznefet, the headgear, it was first Aharon and then his sons. Because whether you're looking at the commandment or you're looking at the implementation, whichever Pesukim you take a look at, you'll see Aharon comes before the sons. However, the question is about the belt that they wore. Because man amar Aharon v'achar kach banav, the one that says that Aharon was first and then the children, dichtiv v'yachkor oto ba'avnet, because it says that Moshe tied him with the belt. V'hadar ketiv v'yachkor otam avnet. First it says Moshe put the belt around Aharon, then it says he put the belt around the sons. So what do you see from that? It was Aharon and then the sons. And the one that says that Aharon and his sons were done simultaneously, because when Hashem commands, not when it describes the performance, but when he commands Moshe to put the priestly vestments on Aharon and on the sons, it says you should belt them. Okay, which implies at the same time. So you have a different problem here, which is, okay, one side is choosing to favor one description. One side is choosing to favor the other description. In other words, if I decide to favor the description that says Vayachgor otam, that he belted them, meaning at the same time, so then what do I do with the verse that sounds like it was first Aharon and then his sons? And if I'm going to say it was first Aaron and then his sons, what do I do with the verse that says Vayachgor otam, that it was together? So what's the answer? So it says So the one that says that it was really all at once, what does he do with the pasuk that says that it was done, that they weren't done together? Right, that's the question. So the Gemara says, Amar la chahu avneto shel kohen gadol lo zeu avneto shel kohen hediot. So the one that says that it was simultaneous, that the primary pasuk is vayachgor otam avnet, that Moshe belted them with the belt. In other words, it was together. He will say that when it mentions first Aharon and then the sons, it's to tell you that they had different avnetim. They didn't have the same. Avneto shel Kohen Gadol lo zehu avneto shel Kohen Hediot. The Kohen Gadol had shatnez in his belt, because the Torah only describes the avnet of the Kohen Gadol, and then it says that the regular Kohanim also had avnetim. The question is, did they have the same kind of avnet that had shatnez, or did they have a plain avnet that was simpler and less ornate than the Kohen Gadol, that was just a regular ordinary belt that didn't have shatnez? So according to this view, when it says that they were when it separates them because they had different types of belts. But when it talks about the implementation, or when it gives you when Moshe receives the command, he's commanded to do it at the same time. He belts them at the same time. And ulemanda amar Aharon ve'achar kach banav. And what about the one that says that first it was Aaron and then his children? What is he going to do with the pasuk that says you should belt them? Implying that what? Implying that it was simultaneous. So Amar Lach, avneto shel Kohen Gadol zehu avneto shel Kohen Hediot. He'll say that, you know why? Because it's trying to tell you that they had the same belt. Alright, so in other words, these two machlokot are connected. If you say that the description that says that it was simultaneous, that the placement was simultaneous, is primary, then you're going to interpret the pasuk that says it wasn't simultaneous to mean that they have different belts. And if you interpret the pasuk that says they had different says that they weren't simultaneous as primary, that was one after the other, then when it says that they were together, it means that they had the same belt. Right? So you have to choose one from column A, one from column B. You can't say that they were one after the other and also had two different belts, because then you're not going to be able to use the pasuk that says that they were together.
I guess that means there is a doubt as to whether there was a different belt or not.
Exactly. That's the machloket. That's the machloket here. Because he has to do something with the pasuk that says they were the same, and something with the pasuk that says they're different. Right. So difference either means in order, or it means in substance. So either it means that the belts were different, or it means that the order wasn't simultaneous.
Or it could be that there was a different belt, but they're talking about two different times.
You're right. Okay. Could be.
Right.
Now, so now the Gemara says, so v'yachkor oto avnet v'yachkor otam lamali. So why does it say v'yachkor oto and v'yachkor otam? Why does it say he belted him and he belted them? Shema mina Aharon v'yachar kach banav. Right, so that's what teaches you Aharon and then his children and then his sons. Okay, so now the Gemara asks, okay. But still, ubevat achat mi mashkachat la. But how exactly? What do you mean at the same time? Right? According to the view that says the same time, what does that even mean? How is Moshe Rabbeinu affixing a belt to 3 different or to 5 different people at the same time? That's not physically possible, is it? So therefore, what does it mean? It means la tzricha de'akdim. No, it's needed to tell you de'akdim, that he put one before the other. What does it mean? It means there are 2 possible orders. Everybody agrees, Rashi explains, everybody agrees that first they put the clothes. Obviously Moshe Rabbeinu cannot belt or dress 2 different people at the same time, let alone 5 people. What it means was, he put all the clothing on the Kohen Gadol except for the belt. Then he put all the clothing on the other Kohanim except for the belt, and then he went back and belted everybody.
But so even with the belt,
so what is that? What it means is simultaneously doesn't mean actually literally simultaneously. It means there are 2 ways he could do it. He could completely dress Aharon, including his belt, then completely dress the next ones, all of them. Or, either one or the other. In other words, he could either completely dress Aharon, like the order of the pasuk that the belt comes before the me'il, before the coat, so it's in the middle of the order. In other words, finish with Aaron completely, and then finish with the next Kohen, and finish with the next one. Or he could finish everything with Aaron except for Avnet. You see? And then finish everything with the other Kohanim except for Avnet, and then put the belt on everybody. What would that accomplish? That would accomplish that one part of their dressing was not literally simultaneous, because he can't belt more than one person, but it means that it's happening at the same time. He left one part that we're all going to do together.
The fact that you cannot physically do it simultaneously, that it's impossible to do simultaneously,
right?
Unless you do some magic,
right?
then you still have to have one before the other.
Right, no, but that's the point, though. But look at it this way. Let's say I want to say, let's say I have karate students.
Yeah.
All right. So, and there's the black. We say the black belts are going to go before the purple belts and the yellow belts.
Okay.
So, what does that mean? So, one way is that I'll take the black belt and I put on his, top, his tunic, his pants, and his belt.
Okay.
And then I go to the purple belt and I put on his pants, his tunic, and his belt. And then I go to the yellow belt and the same.
Right.
So that's one after the other, starting from the highest rank, going down. But there's another way to do it. Say, you know what? We're all equal, and let's all do at least one activity together. So you know what? I'm going to make the first guy put on his tunic and pants, second guy tunic and pants, third guy tunic and pants, and then we'll all put on our belts at the same time. You see?
So when... right, okay.
That's what it means by bevat achat. Doesn't mean literally simultaneous. It means that he saved one activity, the belting of the Kohanim, for last.
Let me ask you a question.
And did that at once.
Was Moshe actually physically...
Yes, he physically did it. But
that's different than what you just said.
No.
You just said,
I meant to say... No, I said the sensei is going to do it.
So...
Okay?
Right.
So, in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu can either completely finish with Aharon, including his belt, then go to the other Kohanim.
I see.
Or he can do everything in Kohen Gadol except for the belt, then go to the other Kohanim and do everything except for the belt, and then go back to the Kohen Gadol and do everyone's belt.
Right. But that means even then...
They're not simultaneous. In other words,
they're
not literally simultaneous. That's what the Gemara is saying.
In which case, he still has the space to choose one before the other.
Right, but what's the difference? The difference is that everyone's belting is happening in one process. In other words, he's not completing the Kohen Gadol, because if he completes the Kohen Gadol according to the order, then he puts the avnet, and then he puts the me'il, he finishes the Kohen Gadol completely, then goes for the Kohanim, the other Kohanim. There's no connection between... There's one step... Right, there's a step after the belt that will interrupt. This way he's leaving the belt for last on the Kohen, so he can say, okay, everyone has their clothing, now I'm going to do the belting for everyone. So since he's doing the belting for everyone at the end, it's like they're all doing it at the same time. That's what it means to say, according to this view. Now the other side says, no, he completely finished with Aharon. That's the machloket. Did he completely finish with Aharon, including the belt, and then the me'il after that? Or did he finish everything with Aaron except the belt, everything with the other Kohanim except the belt, and then go back and belting everyone? Alright, that's the question. Now, Lama Mafrishin. So the Gemara says, why did they separate the Kohen Gadol for 7 days? Lama Mafrishin? What do you mean why? We already said, if you go like Rabbi Yochanan, right, the way that he said, which was that we compare it to the Miluim, we compare it to the dedication of the Mishkan and the Kohanim back in the old days. If it's according to Resh Lakish, the way that he said, namely that it was imitating Moshe Rabbeinu preparing to go up on Har Sinai, like we said in the couple of dapim ago. Right? So why are you asking why did they separate him? We already discussed this. Rather, what it means to say is like this, why did he have to separate from his wife? In other words, we understand why he has to separate, to have a time of isolation and preparation before Yom Kippur, either because we're imitating the Miluim, or because we're imitating Har Sinai. Why did he have to separate from his wife? Why? Nothing. This is a new issue. That is over.
Okay.
Yeah. So now the question is, why did they? Now we're back to our Mishnah. Why did they have to separate for 7 days? That was the side point. Yeah. So now, why does he have to separate for 7 days? Either according to Rabbi Yochanan or according to Rish Lakish. The question is, why does he have to separate from his wife? Why can't his wife come stay with him in the Lishkat Parhedrin, where he stayed in the Beit HaMikdash? So Tanya, it says Nabraita. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera gives a reason. Shema timatze ishto safek nida v'yavo aleha. Maybe his wife is going to end up being a doubtful nida. She might be a nida, and he has relations with her. And then what happens to a person who is having relations with a nida? Utehi nidata alav. He becomes a 7 days tuma. And if he has 7 days tuma, you're going to have a big problem, because then he's not going to be ready for Yom Kippur. So that's why for 7 days he has to separate from his wife. It's not just a separating from people. He has to separate from his wife for 7 days. Because what if he has relations with a Safek Nida? Really? This Kohen Gadol is going to have relations with his wife when she's a Safek Nida? Is he a wicked person? We're dealing with wicked people? No. What we meant was not that she's going to be a doubtful Nida and he's going to have relations with her anyway, but that he's going to have relations with her, and the minute after she's going to find out that she's a Safek Nida. And that's going to make him a Safek Nida, basically. And then If it's within 7 days of Yom Kippur, what is he going to do? He's not going to be ready. So therefore we tell him, don't have relations with your wife for 7 days. Amro Rabbanan Kamed Rav Chisda, the rabbi said in front of Rav Chisda. Kiman, they said, who is this according to Rabbi Akiva Amar Nida Mitama'et Boala? It must be according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says that if the wife finds out that she is a Nida right after having relations with her husband, that we retroactively, we don't know was she actually in Nida at the moment that they had relations, because she discovered it right afterwards. Okay? So now what do we say about the husband? We know the wife now is in Nida, but was she when they were having relations or not? Maybe it happened the second afterwards, or maybe it was during. Because according to the Rabbanan, we say that a woman who finds out that she's in Nida right after having relations, we don't say misafek, we have to make the husband Nida. We don't say that.
Right, okay.
So therefore, this whole question of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is a problem, because, if she was actually in Nida, he wouldn't have had relations with her. So we must be talking about a case where she didn't know if she was in Nida, she found out right afterwards, and now we have to attribute it to him. But according to the Chachamim, we don't retroactively assume that the guy was Bo'el Nida if she finds out right afterwards. So why should we be worried? Then he should be able to have relations with her at that time, because even if she finds out afterwards that she was a Safek Nida during the time that they had relations, we don't give him the Tumah.
That's a cool one.
It's a leniency, yeah. They're saying we don't retroactively assume. We don't assume. So the Gemara says no. That's not true. Amar lahu Rav Chisda. So the rabbi said this to Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said to them, Afilu temru Rabbanan. Even the rabbis would agree. Why? Because ad kan lo peligei Rabbanan alei de Rabbi Akiva. Because until now, the rabbis did not argue with Rabbi Akiva. Ela bi achar achar. Aval bechad achar module. They only disagree with him in a case of achar achar. What does that mean? So there are 3 stages. The Gemara explains elsewhere that there are 3 time periods of significance when a woman finds out that she's a Nida. If instantly after having marital relations she finds that she's a Nida, that's a definite. Okay? Or if she finds it on his cloth, he wiped himself and finds the dam, then we know that she was in Nida when they had relations. He's definitely Nida. Now what happens if she gets up from the bed and she goes to wipe herself in the bathroom? That's called one achar, one step after. Within that amount of time, let's say a minute, she finds out. So then we say, you know what, she's definitely in Nida now. He is a Safek Nida, for sure. Safek Nida.
That assumes that he has not found blood.
He didn't find blood on himself. She found the blood, but she found it, let's say, within a minute or 2 minutes after having relations. So we say it's a Safek. What if it's even longer than that? Longer than the amount of time it takes for her to come out of the bed, go to the bathroom, and check herself. So if it's any longer than that, she, of course, is now in Nida because she found that she had blood, but he wouldn't be considered anything. So where do they argue? They only argue in the 3rd case. Rabbi Akiva says even in the 3rd case, where a minute or 2 passed already, and then she found the dam, we still say that the husband's Safek Nida. Okay? The rabbis say, no, that's too much of a distance. We're not going to go that far. However, if she found it within a minute afterwards, not instantly at the time, but a minute afterwards when she got off the bed to go wipe herself, she found it, then what? Even the Chachamim agree, we give him the status of a Nida. Okay? So what does that mean? So that means that if this Kohen Gadol hypothetically could be having relations with his wife during the 7 days prior to Yom Kippur, and then the second after they had relations, or a minute after, she could find that she was in Nida.
Either way,
and then he would be a Safek Nida.
Either way, the only way to handle it is for him not to have relations.
That's the only way you can be sure. That's the only way you can be sure. So therefore, that's why they didn't allow him. Okay? So that's why the Rav Chisda said. Amar Rabbi Zera said, Shema mina bo'el nida ino kenida v'tovel bayom. We can learn from this that a bo'el nida is not like a nida. He's allowed to go to the mikveh in the daytime. De'i amrat bo'el nida kenida, because if a bo'el nida, a person who had relations with a nida, is the same halacha as a nida herself, emat tavil. When is he going to go to the mikveh? Belelia, if he goes at night, then lemachar hechi avid avodah. What he's saying is like this. We're saying it's 7 days. Let's say Yom Kippur is going to be on Shabbat, just to pick weekdays, okay? So that means that the first day of separation that he's going to have is the previous Shabbat, because he needs 7 full days. Now that means that the last time he could have had relations with his wife was Friday night. Then he goes into isolation on Shabbat day. Then on Friday, that's the 7th day. Now let's say worst case scenario, what happens? he has relations with his wife that Friday night. She's a Safek Nida. That means he's a Safek Nida. Oy vavoy. Now what happens? He needs to count 7 days. Shabbat, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday night he has to go to the mikveh. Now if we don't allow him to go, right, Leil Yom Kippur, but he could go. Now if he goes Friday night to the mikveh, if, in other words, he can only go to the mikveh at night, he has to wait for the entire 7 days to pass and go to the mikveh at night, we have a problem, because everybody who becomes tahor needs both mikveh and ha'arev shemesh, also a nightfall to happen, which means that he would have to wait till the following night to be able to be kashet, to be completely tahor. So if he's going Friday night to the mikveh, because last Friday night he was a safek nida, bo'el nida, then he has to wait until Friday night to go to the mikveh. Then Saturday morning on Yom Kippur, he's still not ready to do the avodah, because he needs to wait for another nightfall to come. Therefore, Rabbi Zera says it must be that he can go on the daytime on Friday to the mikveh. And since he can go on the daytime Friday, so therefore, he's allowed to, in other words, the night of Yom Kippur will be his Ha'aref HaShemesh.
Meaning it's an exception for the Kohen Gadol?
No, that the Bo'el Nida is not like a Nida. In other words, the person who has relations with the Nida has a more lenient law. He's allowed to go on the 7th day during the daytime.
Okay.
And so since he can go on the 7th day during the daytime, then that night is his nightfall that completes the purification.
But during the day, does that mean that he can wait only 6 because
no, he's still waiting 7 days. He waited Saturday through Friday. That's 6 days, 7 days.
No, but if he doesn't wait
on the 7th day, he goes to the mikveh.
Right, but it's not.
And then the night falls.
So
but it doesn't matter for a bo'el nida. Only for a nida it matters. That's a chidush. So what's the reason? So the logical reason for this is, it doesn't explain in the Gemara, but I'm just saying outside the box. The logical reason for this is that we can explain, because nida, she's the source of the tumah. The 7 days are the tum'ah for the nida. In his case, it's the relationship that he had with her that made him a nida. Right. He's not the source of the tum'ah, so he has a type of tum'ah that's more like a counting of 7 days. It's not like a 7-day tum'ah. So it's more like a zava. A zava has the 7 clean days. She could theoretically go to the mikveh even during the day, even though we don't do that normally. But she could, because it's a counting of 7 days. It's not a tum'ah of 7 days.
So the reason we don't do that is the humrah.
It's a stringency that we do, and also because of modesty issues and things like that. Yeah. Okay. So what's the and other technicalities that we're worried that she'll go to the mikveh during the day, then she'll see dam later that same day, and she won't realize that she's it ruins the 7 days because she'll think she's done. Okay, so now what is it? So he shows that a bo'el nida can't be like a nida, because he must be going to the mikveh on that Friday during the day, and then the night falls what completes the purification. Okay, therefore we must conclude that the bo'el nida, the person who has relations with the nida, is not like a nida herself. Rav Shimi minahar da'a amar. Rav Shimi minahar da'a says, afilu tema bo'el nida kenida. No, I disagree. You can't prove it. Maybe he can't go to the mikveh until Friday night in that case. Maybe you would be right. It would be a big problem. However, but what we do is but really, what we do is something very simple. It's not that he's allowed to go to the mikveh during the day. But in the case we described where Yom Kippur falls out on Saturday, on Shabbat, so therefore you're saying that he's going to go start staying in the Lishkat Parhedrin on Shabbat day. That's day number 1 of the 7 days. Day number 7 will be Friday. No, we don't do it that way. We make him go right before that day. So in other words, even though he goes into isolation for 7 days and a few hours, because he actually goes Friday afternoon into the isolation. In other words, if it would be that Yom Kippur is the following Shabbat, he would actually go Friday afternoon into the isolation, not Shabbat morning. So the last time he actually could have had relations with his wife would have been Thursday night, not Friday night, because he's already in isolation Friday afternoon. And therefore, the worst case scenario would be that we started counting Friday, 7 clean days. Okay, so to speak. And so then you would have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the last day would be Thursday. He could go to the mikveh Thursday night, and Friday night would complete his purification. So in other words, what they're doing is basically saying it's 8 days of separation from as far as his wife is concerned, it's 8 days of separation. Because since he goes into the isolation chamber, not in the morning of the first day, but actually before sunset and the evening before, so he's actually a day ahead. It's actually in a way 8 days from his wife. Okay, it's not 7 days. But the Gemara says, Meitive, we're going to raise an objection to this because it says, Chol chayavei tevilot, all those who are obligated in tevilah, all those who are required to go to the mikveh, it says that tevilatan bayom, they can go to the mikveh in the daytime. But nida v'yoledet tevilatan balayla, except for a nida and yoledet, their tum'ah is the 7 days itself. The source of the tum'ah is the 7 days. They can't go to the mikveh during the 7 days. They have to wait for them to be over. Okay, so but what does that show? You need da'in, bo'el nida lo. What's the implication? A nida has to wait till the 7 days are over completely to be able to go to the mikveh. Not a bo'el nida. A bo'el, unlike what Rav Shimi min Harda'ah was saying. No, even a bo'el nida, he's the same as a nida. He also has to wait till the 7 days are completely over and go to the mikveh at night. They're saying no.
Are they talking also about bo'el full-fledged nida?
Same thing. It's the same halacha. Of course, we hope that doesn't happen, but yeah.
Right. So even the okay.
So the issue is that that what does it show you? Nida in bo'el nida lo. So bo'el nida is not included. So what will Rav Shimi b'mei Harda'ah say? Lo nida. So he'll say no. Nida v'chol da'atei miribuya. We'll say that a nida and anybody who comes from the nida. Let's learn from the nida. So just like the nida has to wait for her 7 full days to be over and go to tevilah at night, so too with the bo'el nida the same. So then the Gemara says, but we'll raise another objection to Rav Shimi min Harda'ah. Bal keri kemaga sheretz. Somebody who has a seminal emission is like someone who touches a sheretz. Bo'el nida kitmemet. And the bo'el nida is like a tmemet. Which means, now the implication is, my lav la tevilah. Doesn't it mean with regard to tevilah? In other words, the balkari who has a seminal emission, he can go to the mikveh the same day, and at night he's tahor, just like someone who touched a sheretz can go the same day he touched a sheretz, go to the mikveh during the day, and at night he'll be tahor. Okay, so and a bo'el nida is like a tmemet. A tmemet can go the 7th day during the day, go to the mikveh, and that night he's good. The bo'el nida can go 7th day during the day, and at night he's good. You see? Okay. So now the Gemara says, lo, the tumatan. No, it's not saying that it's the same with regard to tevilah. It's saying with regard to tum'ah. Meaning that as touching a sheretz is a 1-day tum'ah, so is a seminal emission a 1-day tum'ah. Right? Bo'el nida is a 7-day tum'ah, just like tumat met is a 7-day tum'ah. In other words, it's not, when it says that a bo'el nida is like a tumat met, it's saying that they're both 7-day tum'ah. Not that you can, but actually there's a difference. That Rav Shimi min Harda'ah will say there's a difference because the tameh met can actually go to the mikveh during the day, but the bo'el nida can't.
Okay.
The Gemara says, what do you mean? Tumatan behedya ketiv behu. It says in the Torah. Hi tumat shiva ketiv bei, hi tumat shiva ketiv bei. Each one says the length of the tumah. Right? When it comes to the Tameh Met, it says it's 7 days. When it comes to the case of the bo'el nida, it says it's a 7-day tumah. Why do I need to learn that from the Mishnah? The Mishnah doesn't have to tell me that. It must be telling me, as we turn to Amud Bet, Ela lav l'tvilatan. It must mean, with regard to their tvilah, that just like somebody who's Tameh Met can go to the mikveh during the day, a bo'el nida can also go to the mikveh during the day, like Rabbi Zera originally said. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Lo le'olam letumatan." Nope, I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to say still, it means letumatan. It means to compare their level of tum'ah, that they're both 7-day tumot. Sefa itzrichale, but the end of the Mishnah is really what's important. Ella shechamor mimenu bo'el nida shemitame mishkav u'moshav betum'ah kala letame ochalin u'mashkin. That the end, you're right. The beginning of the Mishnah we don't need to know that the tamemet and the bo'el nida, the person who has relations with a nida, are the same with regard to their 7-day tumah. We don't need to know that. But that's an introduction to what it says at the end of the Mishnah, namely, that there's a difference. A bo'el nida is more stringent. Let's say there are 10 pillows stacked, and the bo'el nida sits on the top of the 10 pillows. All the pillows under him become tameh, rishon l'tumah. If a tameh met sits on top of the pillows, only the one he touches becomes tameh, not the rest of them. So that's a stringency. Okay, so that's why it had to mention that the tumah is similar. But really a bo'el nida has to go at night to the mikveh. So this is the machloket. Do we treat the bo'el nida like a nida? Or do we treat him like one of the other tumot?
Because there's a difference.
Because the problem is on one hand...
between the transmission of the
right.
and the process of purification.
Well, that's the whole question. The question is, when we say the bo'el nida is like a nida, do we mean that therefore all, like... it's like a nida status is transferred to the guy, or is it a derivative type of tumah that has its own rules? Right.
In which case
he could go to the mikveh during the day then.
Right, and there's no argument there.
Then it would be easier. Tashima, come and listen. The Tani Rabbi Chia was taught by Rabbi Chia. Hazav v'hazava v'mitzorah v'mitzorat uboel nida utmemet tevilatan bayom. It's explicit, right? Azav, azava, mitzorah, mitzorat. These are the lepers, right? Uboel nida utmemet tevilatan bayom. All these people can go to the mikveh during the day. Nida v'yoledet tevilatan balayla. A nida and a woman who gave birth have to go at nighttime. Tiyuvta. It's a tiyuvta. In other words, that is a decisive refutation of Rav Shimi min Harda. So now we're back to what Rav
is about what just
because Rav Shimi min Harda was saying that a Bo'el Nida also has to wait till nightfall on the 7th day before he goes to the mikveh. Which would mean that he has to separate from his wife an additional day on the other end, right?
It's like, how do you know that tiyuvta is about the...
Because it's the context. Because it explicitly said the Bo'el Nida is Tevilatan Bayom. And what was Rav Shimi saying? Oh, no, he has to go at night. And we were trying to infer from all these Mishnayot that no, he can go during the day. So finally find an explicit statement, he can go during the day, for sure. Which means that if the Kohen Gadol is separating, he doesn't have to separate an extra day. Like Rav Shimi ben Harda said, if Yom Kippur is on Shabbat, he has to separate from the Thursday night before from his wife. Because in case she's a Safek Nida, he needs to go to the mikveh Thursday night. He can't go Friday night. And Rabbi Zera had said, no, he can go Friday afternoon. He doesn't have to go at nighttime. He can go Friday afternoon. So that's why they rejected that. So va'ad shatam afrisho mitumat beto afrishem mitumat hamet. You're so worried about separating him from the tumah of his family. In other words, from nida. What about tumat met? Maybe nobody should be allowed to visit the Kohen Gadol because they might drop dead, and then he's going to be tameh. Amar Rav Tachlifa avoid Rav Huna. Rav Tachlifa, the father of Rav Huna, Mishmei de Rava said in the name of Rava, Zot omeret. This teaches you tumat hamet hutra. It's to show you. Tumat hamet is hutra betzibur, which means like this. There's two concepts, hutra and dechuya. Hutra means something is totally permitted. We don't even have to go out of our way to avoid it. Dechuya means we push it off. In other words, A pushes off B. But if we could not have B at all, that would be even better. Whereas if we hutra means B is not even significant. A is so important that B is not even significant. We don't care if it's there or not. So what's the relevance? We know that tumat met can be overridden bitzibur. It could be, we can override the impurity of the dead when there's a communal korban involved. So the question here is it hutra or dechuya? Do we say really we should take every precaution to avoid any kind of tumat met ever from coming into play here? Because it's really dechuya, because we're going to be forced to override the tumah, but we don't want to. Or do we say no, it's hutra, we don't care about tumat met when it comes to the communal sacrifices. We don't care. If it happens, we don't care. So he says, you know what you see from here? If it happens, we don't care. Because that's why we don't care if somebody drops dead on the Kohen Gadol. We're not worried about that. If he becomes tameh, he becomes tameh. So the Gemara says, really? Ravina says, Afilu temat tumat hamet dechuyahi betzibor. You don't have to go that far. Maybe really we do want to avoid tumat met. Because we don't want it to emerge. It's not that we don't care. We do care, but we'll override it, but we don't want to have to override it. It's like when the president wants the Congress to vote for his bill, or he wants them to vote a certain way, he doesn't want to have to veto it. Right? He would rather if they voted the way that he wanted rather than having to veto some legislation, right? So we don't want it to come in, so we don't have to veto it. We don't have to override it. However, there's a simpler reason why we don't ban visitation to the Kohen Gadol. What's the reason? Tumat hamet lo shechicha. Tumat beto shechicha. Tumat hamet is not common. How many times does it happen to you that somebody dropped dead right on their middle dog and they dropped dead? Okay, it could happen. It's happened. Right. It's happened to people, and it certainly could happen. And if you're in a hospital, maybe it's even a high chance. But randomly, you're just sitting there talking with somebody, they drop dead. Very uncommon, very unlikely. Therefore, we're not worried about that. But tumat beto, a woman going into nida, could certainly happen. That's why we're careful about that, but not about tumat met. Itmar, it was stated tumat met Rav Nachman amar hutra hi betzibur, Rav Shishid amar dechuya hi betzibur. That the general issue tumat met is it hutra or dechuya? Is tumat, in other words, do we simply ignore the concept of tumat met when it comes to communal korbanot, or we're overriding it? We reckon with it, we recognize it, we don't like it, but we override it. Rav Sheshet says the latter. So hechad ikatmeinu taurin bahu bet av kule alma laplige de taurin avdi tmein lavde. So in a case where, let's say, the shift of kohanim who are on duty that week have some people who are tamei and some people who are tahor, everybody agrees the people who are tahor should be the ones to work. Why would you put the people who are tamei in? However, lo pligei de tahorin avde tmein lo avde, right? Ki pligei la ahadure or la atuye tahorin mi bet av achrina. The question is, should you go and bring tahor people from another bet av? In other words, if you have if you don't have any tahorim in your group. Okay, so in other words, when you have tahor people and tamei people in the group, in the bet av, in the people who are on that day, who are supposed to be on that day, okay, because in every watch was also divided into batei av. The batei av were Monday, Sunday through Friday. They had their work that they would do. So you were a part of a certain mishmar, part of a certain watch, and within that watch was divided up into batei avot. It was divided up into families. So if the family that was supposed to serve that day had tameim and tahorim, pure and impure people, so we will say that of course the pure people should serve. But what happens if everybody's tamei? Should we go? In other words, do we have to? No, everybody in that group for that day that was supposed to serve on Monday, they're all tameim. So should we go to one of the other groups and bring a tahor or not? So that's where it comes in, that Rav Nachman amar heter hi betzibur. Rav Nachman says, listen, it's allowed betzibur, where they're doing the communal korbanot. Velo madrinan, you don't have to go out of your way to bring kohanim that are tahor. If the ones that are in front of you for today are tameh, if they're all tameh. Rav Sheshet amar dechuyahi betzibur. And Rav Sheshet says, no, it's dechuyah. We want to minimize the overriding of the law of tum'ah here, and therefore umahadrinan. Therefore, we do in fact go and find other kohanim. So if everybody who was supposed to be on duty that day is tmeim, but there are other kohanim around who are tehorim, we go get them. So what's the concept? According to Rav Nachman, if we're in a situation where we'd have to go out of our way, we say, listen, we don't care about tumat met here. It's not as significant to us. We're just going to go with the people we have. But according to Rav Sheshet, no. We're overriding the concept of tumat met. We don't want to do that. So if we have to go get other kohanim from tomorrow's group, we'll go do that instead. That's the way that Rav Sheshet understands it. Okay? Ika da amri, some say, afilo hechad de ika teorinu tmein behahu bet av palig Rav Nachman amar ve'amar avdeinami tmein. That some say, even in a case where there are tehorim and tmeim in the same group. In other words, the Monday group has some tamei people, some tahor people. In the first version, everybody agreed, certainly you only give the tehorim. You only give the pure people to work. No, some, according to one version, Rav Nachman said, even there, the tmeim are allowed to work. Why? We turn to Zayin Amud Aleph, dekol tumat met betzibur rahmana sharyeh. Because any tumat met in the tzibur, when it comes to communal korbanot, the Torah permitted it. So what does that show us? That shows us that according to this version, he would allow, even if you had in the same group Tehorim and Tmeim, to say, you know what, we don't care about Tumat Met. You're Tamei Met? Alright, if you're a Zav, if you're a Balkari, you can't serve. But at Tamei Met, we have a special dispensation to allow Tamei Met to serve. And therefore, since it's your day, you're supposed to be working today, you're doing communal korbanot, you're allowed to do it. And that's what Rav Nachman holds according to this. Now the halacha brought in the Rambam actually is that we hold like Rav Sheshet, that even on the same day, certainly if on the same day there are Toharim and Tameim, you have to take the Toharim. But even if everybody is Tamei that day, but there are other Kohanim for tomorrow's group that are Toharim, you have to take those instead. Because we say that Tumat Med is Dechuya. We're pushing it off. So we only push off when we have no other option. It's the nuclear option, as they say. When we have no other option, that's the way that we go.